Welcome back to our new podcast series, Forbeck on the Forefront, brought to you by the William Guy Forbeck Cancer Research Foundation. In today's episode, we will explore the amazing promise of artificial intelligence as it relates to cancer research. Our hosts break down the content of an amazing interview that the Foundation's Executive Director, Jamie Collins, hosted with two of our scholars, Peter Winter, a PhD from the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, and Barbara Engelhardt, a PhD from University of Berkeley. We've broken it down into a less technical, more digestible format for your listening pleasure.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something really powerful and changing fast: artificial intelligence. Specifically, we want to look at how AI is making waves in cancer research, especially in that really challenging space of, drug discovery and development.
Yeah, it's an area just buzzing with innovation. And look, AI has huge potential everywhere, right? Diagnostics, maybe even fine-tuning treatments. But for this deep dive, we're really zeroing in, guided by some great insights from people like Peter Winter at the Broad and Barbara Engelhardt at Stanford. We're focusing on drug discovery. It's just such a hot topic right now. And honestly, the need for new effective treatments is, it's incredibly urgent.
It really feels like a race against time, doesn't it? So our mission today really is to unpack how AI is being used right now, what are the big hurdles it's still facing, and what's the big vision? How can it speed up those breakthroughs that could save lives? So, okay, let's get into it. When we talk about AI strengths right now in this area, where is it really making a difference?
Well, one of the clearest strengths, especially today, is in what's called target-based drug discovery. Maybe we should clarify that. There's sort of two main ways to think about finding drugs. There's phenotypic-based discovery, which is a bit broader, almost like throwing darts.
Yeah.
You treat cells with a compound, see if something good happens, but you might not know exactly why it worked.
Right, kind of observational, see what sticks.
Exactly. But target-based discovery is much more precise. Here, you identify a specific thing in the cancer cell you want to hit, like maybe a faulty protein that's making the cancer grow. And the whole goal is to design a drug molecule that specifically sticks to that target and messes it up.
Okay, and this is where AI is really shining right now.
Yes. Peter Winter really emphasizes this. AI is incredibly good, not just at finding molecules, but actually creating better molecules. One's designed specifically to bind and disrupt those very specific cancer targets. It's about getting really precise, moving beyond just, trial and error.
Surgical precision, almost.
That's a good way to put it. And Barbara Engelhardt agrees. She points out that if you know your target, that faulty protein, say AI is already really, really good at a few things. It can predict. Can we even make a molecule to stick to it? Will it disrupt its function effectively? And crucially, it can also predict the downstream effects, what happens in the cell after you disrupt that target. The power here isn't just doing it faster, though that's part of it. It's shifting from just screening tons of stuff to actually predicting and designing. That could fundamentally change how we make drugs, saving huge amounts of time and money.
Wow, okay. That's a massive shift. But designing better drugs for targets we already know about, that's only one part of it, right? What about finding completely new targets, new ways to attack the cancer? That seems like a bigger, maybe more fundamental challenge. Peter Winter mentioned he's fascinated by this, but it's maybe less obvious how AI helps there.
It is less clear, definitely more challenging. But there's progress, for sure. It's promising. Barbara Engelhardt talks about improvements in what she calls in silico experiments. So these aren't happening in lab dishes. They're complex computer simulations. Researchers can basically digitally poke or perturb specific genes or pathways in a computer model of a cell. And then they can see the simulated effect, like change this gene digitally, what happens. This capability is starting to give us real clues about completely new targets, things we might have missed with slower traditional lab experiments. It's like having a virtual lab running thousands of experiments super fast.
That simulation power, predicting at scale.
Yeah,
that sounds like a potential game changer. But it also makes me think none of this works without data, right? Huge amounts of data. And I guess not just any data. It has to be the right kind of data, high quality data.
Oh, absolutely critical. The success of any AI model, any effective AI agent, as they're sometimes called, it totally depends on the data it learns from, the type, the quality, everything. Both Peter and Barbara have really highlighted this, and many others too. There are definitely gaps in the kinds of data we have now. We urgently need to build better, richer data sets. And this isn't just a job for the computer scientists, you know.
Yeah.
It needs biologists who understand the cancer, computational folks building the models, AI engineers designing the algorithms, all working together. They have to figure out what data actually gives useful insights. How should it be structured? What makes it most powerful for the AI? It's a real cross-team effort.
Okay, so you need this intense collaboration just to get the right fuel for the AI. But then once you start pulling in data from all these different places, how do you even know if it's accurate? How do you trust it? Especially when the stakes are, finding cancer drugs. This seems to lead right into what Barbara Engelhardt calls the billion-dollar question.
Yes, it really is the core issue. It goes beyond just making sure the AI model itself is accurate. Like, does it reliably predict what we ask it to predict? That's calibration. That's important. But the bigger billion-dollar question is, can we actually speed up the whole drug discovery process? Can we make that entire pipeline from an idea in a lab to a medicine helping a patient go much, much faster? The urgency is just immense. Think about those N of 1 cases, really unique individual cancers where standard stuff doesn't work and the clock is ticking loudly. The big aim is to use AI to drastically shorten that time, get effective, targeted drugs to patients faster, using AI assistance to make it happen.
So if the main test is, as Peter Winter puts it, we'll know AI helped if we get there faster, then validation has to be absolutely key. We need to be sure we're finding genuinely good drugs, not just more drug candidates.
Precisely. That is absolutely paramount. We need robust ways to validate these AI predictions. We have to make sure that the positive examples, the really promising drug candidates identified by AI, are the ones moving forward into costly experiments and trials. The risk is flooding the pipeline with what Peter and Barbara might call mediocre, not functional drugs that wastes resources and time. So AI needs to act like a really smart filter, a quality control check, potentially saving billions in wasted effort and, most importantly, getting the truly effective treatments to patients sooner. It's about improving the whole funnel.
Okay, that makes sense. Filtering the good from the mediocre. You mentioned data quality being critical. Let's talk about where this data even comes from. What kinds of systems are generating the information that feeds these AI models, and how good are they really?
Yeah, that's a huge point. The data comes from all over the place. And this leads us to another really big, persistent problem in drug discovery overall. How well do the models we use in the lab, things like animal models or cells grown in a dish, cell lines, or even these newer things called organoids, how well do they actually mimic the human being we're trying to treat? For anyone listening who doesn't know, organoids are like tiny simplified versions of organs grown in the lab, more complex than cell lines, but still not a whole person. There's often a really significant gap between lab results and what actually happens in a patient. It's a known translation problem.
Right, the bench to bedside challenge. So AI isn't just finding targets or designing molecules. It could potentially act as a kind of bridge across that gap between lab models and humans. That's really interesting.
Exactly. This is another area where AI's analytical power could be transformative. Using advanced AI strategies, maybe sophisticated things like foundation models or large language models, maybe even simpler models, that AI can actually start to quantify how similar or different these various lab models are compared to data from actual human patients. Think of foundation models like these big, versatile AI systems trained on massive amounts of biological data. They can spot patterns, like how large language models understand text. So the AI analyzes tons of data, genomic data, protein data, how the cells look and behave from both the lab models and from humans. It learns to see the differences, the similarities. It helps researchers understand that critical gap. And once you understand the gap, you can strategize how to bridge it better, making the lab work much more predictive of what will actually help a person in the clinic. It's about increasing relevance.
Wow. Okay, so this whole thing, finding targets, designing drugs, bridging models, it sounds incredibly complex. It really screams interdisciplinary, doesn't it? It can't just be biologists or computer scientists alone. It sounds like you almost need people who speak two different languages fluently.
You absolutely hit the nail on the head. It requires deep collaboration.
Yeah.
That's exactly why things like the Forbeck Forum on AI and cancer research are so important. They literally bring together this super diverse group. You've got molecular biologists, doctors, computer scientists, statisticians. Imagine getting all those different perspectives, all those different expertises focused on the same problem in one room.
And I heard the sessions are organized by biological scale, which makes a lot of sense given everything we've discussed about different data layers.
Yes, that's a key part of the design. They structure it moving from the tiny scale molecules like proteins, DNA,
Right.
up to the level of whole cells, and then even further up to the level of tissues or the whole patient, looking at observable traits or phenotypes. And bridging those scales is, as they say, incredibly difficult. Because the tools, the data, even the language people use are so different at each level. The idea of the forum is to get people talking across those scales, figuring out how to connect the dots. Trying to integrate this stuff when you're working in isolation, it just doesn't work well. It's like building a complex machine with teams who can't read each other's plans.
Yeah, it really highlights that need for what some people are calling bilingual people in science. Folks who can genuinely speak both the deep science of cancer and the technical language of AI.
That's precisely the aim. Identify and nurture these bilingual individuals, people who can fluidly speak the science and speak the AI. They're crucial for overcoming the translation barriers that slow things down. It creates an environment for what Barbara Engelhardt calls design for inference. Key. Where maybe a cancer biologist throws out, the craziest idea for an experiment, and then machine learning experts can immediately chime in, okay, wait, given the data we could get and the models we can build, can we actually design this experiment so we can learn something meaningful from it? Or maybe they say, that's interesting, but computationally, that's just too far out right now. There's this back and forth, this collaborative push and pull that drives both fields forward together, faster than either could alone.
And Peter Winter specifically mentioned that the Forbeck Forums format is really suited for this kind of intense interaction, right? It's not just a standard conference.
He did. He emphasized that strongly. It's set up for deep immersion, for really learning each other's perspectives and language and working together intensely enough that you can start to genuinely move these complicated fields forward together as quickly as possible. Now, one meeting isn't going to solve everything overnight, obviously. But it's a powerful catalyst. It brings the right mix of people together to ignite that process, that collaborative spark.
Okay, so you bring these brilliant minds, these bilingual experts together. What happens next? What are the hoped-for outcomes after something like the Forbeck Forum wraps up? What's the vision?
Well, there are a few key goals. Barbara Engelhardt sees these forums as crucial for identifying the holes. Where are the weak spots in our current system across all those scales? Where's our data lacking? Where do our models break down? Where is our understanding just fuzzy? So first, identify the gaps. Then the next step is to pinpoint specific ways to fill them. Maybe that means designing totally new kinds of data sets, purpose-built for AI, or maybe inventing new lab technologies to gather better information, or of course, developing and training new, more powerful AI models. And a really big hope, a very concrete one, is that new collaborations will just naturally spin out of these meetings. People finding common ground, common problems, and deciding, hey, let's team up and tackle this gap we just identified.
It sounds like it's really about building capacity and connection, not just finding quick fixes, cultivating a kind of deeper, lasting understanding between the different fields.
Absolutely. Peter Winter really stressed that. The desire is for more of these bilingual characters to emerge. It's fundamentally about building mutual understanding. And maybe just as important, developing empathy for the limitations of each other's disciplines. Nobody could be an expert in everything, right? Especially not in fields this specialized. But if a biologist can appreciate the challenges a computer scientist faces with noisy data, and if the computer scientist understands the biological complexities that make getting clean data so hard, that shared understanding, that empathy, leads to a much more effective synergistic approach. It speeds everything up.
Wow, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. Looking at AI and cancer drug discovery from so many angles. We've seen how AI is already making drugs better for known targets, and how it's just starting to help find new ones, but also how absolutely critical the right data is. That whole data challenge and that billion-dollar question, not just model accuracy, but can we actually speed up the whole pipeline? Plus, bridging that gap between lab models and actual human patients, and the thread running through it all seems to be this intense need for collaboration for those bilingual scientists connecting all the scales.
It truly is a landscape of incredible complexity, huge challenges, but also immense hope for treating cancer more effectively in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you wonder, considering all these challenges, wrangling diverse data, bridging biological scales, getting lab models closer to humans, as AI keeps pushing these boundaries in cancer drug discovery, what sort of unexpected new scientific questions might pop up, or what new kinds of collaborations, maybe even ones we can't quite imagine yet, might emerge down the road? Definitely a lot to think about, and we'll be watching closely to see what happens next.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope it was enlightening as we continue to bring you important insights into our work here at the William Guy Forbeck Research Foundation. We encourage you to share this with other like-minded individuals. The truth is, we can't do this alone. We need your generous donations so that we can continue to push forward toward our mutual goal: a cure for cancer. Please give what you can. I assure you it goes directly to funding this critical research.